There's audio.
I don't feel the need for them very.
I randomly had them for a while. I
And
don't remember
closed
why
captions.
Kristen had me have them, but they were there.
Good evening, everybody. Couple of us here. We are going to call this meeting to order, 6:32. Just as a reminder to everybody, these meetings are counted towards things like voting rights and such. So do please make sure that you, if you want to be counted as in attendance, you are both commenting in the chat and emailing the secretary email at, I always remember it's not ATC secretary.
Should we get you a script?
It is, yeah, ATC_secretary at animatedtwincities.org. To be counted as in attendance. Probably going to be a relatively quick email.
Email?
Can you send her the link?
I'm on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Brittany will be here in just a couple minutes. Looks like she didn't quite get the link.
Yeah, she was invited. It should be on her calendar.
Yeah, I did send it.
Google do be weird sometimes.
Yeah. So we do have the updated agenda on the board on the Anime Twin Cities website. So that's nice there. So we will start with recapping. Start with, as usual, recapping any off-cycle board actions and votes. I don't think we did anything since the last meeting, unless I'm forgetting something, or there was something that happened that I didn't know about.
Correct.
Okay. We will open it up then to the public. We'll give a couple minutes for anybody to ask any questions during the open session. Everybody having a good season? We're ready for this nice, brisk, cool weather.
I'm ready for all the bugs
Brisk,
to
now
die.
freezing, count me in.
I like it. Well, let's get that Yeti action going.
Mm-hmm.
All the bugs are dead.
The
The
kids,
mosquitoes have gone back to hell where they came from.
couple years back when I was working for Charter, it was like 35 below. It's under guy's trailer running some wire, and there was a mosquito walking slowly towards me at 35 below, under a trailer full of spiders and stuff. It was dark. It's the middle of the day, but it's under a trailer, so it's dark. Mosquito in the dark, surrounded by all its natural predators, at 35 below, is walking like 3 feet towards a source of bodies. I'm like,
They should have been frozen solid.
I feel like that was a radioactive mosquito. You could have gotten superpowers.
no, that is natural selection. So,
A bunch of spiders, count me out.
right?
No
So,
kidding.
anyway, so it looks like nobody is commenting with any questions or anything here. Was that a hand raised ding or a notification ding?
Notification, I believe.
Okay. So we'll move on to, I am not aware of any planned discussions.
There was that one thing I brought up.
That's on the bottom of the list.
Okay, I'll have this.
Planned discussions from scheduled visiting parties.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'll have to check this, like I said.
Yep. And I have not received any equipment rentals, and Tabby has not communicated anything that she may have gotten. So we can roll right on into Anime Detour updates with Troy, our delightful chairman.
Let's see. Well, it's the big stuff this month is budgets. So we were having the department heads turn in all their budgets. We had a few incoming department heads that we were working with as they acclimate themselves to the process. A few department heads that didn't get theirs in, so we completed that task for them, and we'll follow up with them about that expectation. And believe that the process went fairly well. Otherwise, in terms of other events, be working with the hotel in preparation for opening up essentially reservations or hotel room block, et cetera, however you want to word it, to the general public this month. Outside of that, yeah, like I said, we'll be onboarding just a few more department heads and helping them get situated into this part of the cycle. And then getting if everything goes well, getting the budgets back to sorry, I was looking at the chat, returning those budgets back to the department heads, working with them if they have any questions on how the process went and how it affects them. And then they will have access to those finances for purchases and things like that. So I know a lot of departments kind of wait for that and are dependent on that to sort of begin the next steps in their planning. So yeah, then just sort of the next parts of the steps, preparing for guest announcements. The next further out past that be the increase in registration pricing, additional deadlines further out after the first of the year, programming deadline, theme deadlines, that sort of thing. So budget is kind of the largest one this part of the cycle. And so unless there's any additional questions, I will probably have allocation issues, but we went and had a downscaled tour of the hotel, a few spaces that we'll repurpose either in whole or part, some areas, as well as having the new exhibit hall head take a look at the space so she can acclimate herself to that in her new role, and then see how two of the spaces programming can utilize. They didn't have access to it at all hours last year, and one of the spaces look at how if we need to shift some things around. So just a little bit of reallocation, or seeing how we can reutilize those spaces, but it won't be a large shift of a number of areas. And that's about all I can think of, unless there's any questions.
I did have one question, just because I'm forgetful. I know you guys have mentioned before that you are upping the badge prices a little bit, and you mentioned the numbers, but I don't remember. Can you repeat those numbers for me?
It will just be the initial adult badge price for the first tier. So instead of it being $50 for the first duration, it'll be $55. So nothing else has changed in terms of the second or third tier for the duration of open registration, and nothing else has changed for when we make the price tier jump I don't have the date on hand for the next date jump or for at door. Those have all stayed the same. Just that $50 adult badge has changed to $55. Nothing with the teen price or the children's price. Just that 50 went to 55.
Okay. So just gotta make sure we update some of those prices when we are on for anything we're doing on if we're doing any other tables or anything like we did at Oban. So just gotta make sure we update that.
Right.
So. Alrighty. Anybody else have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat. I don't know where that got went. Alrighty, so then we will move on to Charities, which is our next coordinator position. At this time, I'm gonna sit down with everybody here as soon as we are able, now that life's eased up just a hair, and try to talk about some ideas about what we can do going forward. Otherwise, we have not received any requests yet this year for any charitable donations or anything. I don't know. Like, I'm hesitant to do a large amount. I think, I was kind of thinking, start out low, go like somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000. A small number because we have been talking about bringing it back this coming year, or this fiscal year. Anybody got any thoughts on that?
I think it's too early to discuss that right now. We're trying to sort out our budgets and all that until we get some idea of our own internal finances laid out. I think it's best to wait on those discussions, figure out what we get.
I think just in general though, I would start small.
Agreed.
That's what I was aiming for, 5 or 10. But as far as that goes, part of that goes is we do have to figure out some of our potential budgets.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we are going to be paying somebody, we still need to figure out our own budgets just to be able to approve that expenditure.
Because when we worked on the detour budget, which I'm sure we'll get to later, the total aggregate amount we got from our finance person is detour budget plus ATC budget. So we tried to make that budget, leaving room obviously for financing for ATC. So we'll have the ATC basically do its own internal budget before we can start looking at anything else.
Yeah, and that's we'll get to that. We'll get to that later when we discuss those, because that's usually been we discuss the ATC budget and the detour budget as separate points, just because the ATC budget usually incorporates the rest of the coordinators as well. Alrighty, I don't see any other questions for that. So we'll roll on to communities with our delightful new person, Brittany.
Okay, so I still haven't gotten any social media pushes out on our open positions, but I'm not 100% sure what all of our open positions are for ATC currently. If we could, let's make it a goal before the next board meeting, because we can do promotions and then start interviewing for, because some of those questions about what charities and what budgets, until we have a lot of those roles placed or fulfilled, or acting beyond one person doing 4 roles like it has been lately, it's going to be hard to allocate what those needs are until we kind of shape those roles. So in terms of communities, I'm working on shadowing some of the detour announcements and kind of reaching out to the community that way. And I think what we should focus on in the next week here, since detour just announced their registration, is talking about what that registration means for ATC, because you are paying a due by having that, but I don't know all the stipulations for voting. So if there's anything that can be forwarded to me for the deep informational stuff, so then I can kind of create the reshare from what Detour posted, but an elongation on what that means for ATC and how they can get involved. That'll be like the first thing we can pin to start recruiting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's you and I touch base later this week. I can get you
Okay,
all.
yeah.
I can get you all that information. I've been trying to find them. Unfortunately, my work schedule has been kind of chaotic, so I've had to set some things aside and wait as work life. Unfortunately, had to take the
yeah.
But
And I know some other people here have fulfilled those.
Yeah,
I'll dig different roles.
I'll dig up those because we got posts and emails and everything with the descriptions of those roles, and a lot of those, like the voting or the membership requirements and such are actually listed as in our bylaws. So I can get you can find those on either on the ATC page, or I can get those to you tonight after the meeting.
Okay, yeah, just like a junk email pile of like info, because I want to like start like pushing those, because like we do need more like engagement and involvement.
I'll touch base with you tonight after the meeting tonight or tomorrow, and we'll see.
Yeah, and I've time Thursday too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be available later this week, and then we can just get all that figured out, posted.
Yeah, because I really haven't been able to like contribute anything, and a part of that is like there's a lot of like the Detour stuff that I'm involved in that has been really heavy, and so like I feel bad because I really from last month wanted to like push some messages out, but I really just didn't have a lot to go from, so I apologize, but.
No, that's totally understandable.
We should look at, this is just super random, and I know this isn't specifically communities, but we should look at getting some of our info, like, pre-updated, not necessarily overhauling anything on the site, but like some of our stuff just like up to date on like what our openings are when we go to get those postings. And this could be just a plan for next month to like touch base on it, but.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I'll work with you. We'll get something figured out.
Sounds good. Membership.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions?
There's one in the chat. You can look if you wish.
Sorry. What do we get as ATC dues paying people? So right now, ATC dues paying people. So part of your ATC, so all of your ATC dues go towards running ATC and its various branches. Go there. As dues paying members, if you have met, or as long as you have paid your dues and met the other requirements to gain voting rights, which at this time is living within, I believe it's.
The biggest one that we see though is it lets you attend Detour because only ATC members can attend Detour.
Correct.
Because you cannot go to Detour without being an ATC member.
Correct. You get that for voting rights, for elections, things like bylaws, stuff like that. We're open to looking at other options, but at this point, those are the biggest two things that we have worked into things. If you got suggestions or other opportunities, I'd be glad to hear them. Because I know that's a question that has been asked on and off over the years.
Moving on.
So, yep. I'm not seeing anything else. And if we're going too fast, please feel free to chime in, and we can kind of circle back a little bit. So we'll roll on to communication. Communities. We've not gotten any correspondence from any of our other partners just yet. It's usually here in the next couple of months where things start picking up a little bit. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I just got one Literally,
It was, we talked about the equipment thing.
no, it was literally like 2 hours ago from GPS. ATC has hosted a Father Christmas during the holiday sales sales event they've had in the past. Obviously, with COVID, we had to stop that. I don't know what what the situation will look like this December, but would ATC be interested in doing that again? Basically, we took over 106A, which is this room. We served drinks, cookies, and stuff. We had a Santa come in. We set up a backdrop. We did pictures and stuff like that. It was in the couple times I went, we did it without charge. So GPS was wondering if we were still looking at doing that. And then the other part of that, we would forward that on to Troy, as that's a detour discussion / question. So I know in the past we looked up rates for like rental Santas, and those things were like those guys were like $100 an hour. And these events, we did the event. I think it was something in the neighborhood of like 3 to 5 hours. I mean, it's something we could. I don't know what we'd figure out with a photographer either. So I don't want to assume that we would, talk to Troy and see if any of those guys would, or be able to do it, or if we would have, or we go out and find somebody we know or rent somebody. But I would be guessing to rent a Santa and photographer and stuff, we'd be looking at somewhere in the $1,000 category. I know the last 2 years my dad has came down and played Santa, but that's something he might be interested in. I'd have to talk to him about it. But we'd still have to figure out a photographer.
I am very hesitant to drop $500 on a Santa.
Well, that's what I'm saying. My dad, he's got.
Yeah, I bet your dad.
He is big, full on. He is Santa. He literally cosplayed Santa at GalaxyCon.
He did.
As a backup, we stick Tristan in the red suit.
I was gonna say, why doesn't Tristan just spray his beard?
Exactly.
You wrecked volunteer hours, Tristan.
I have done that. I have spray painted it before.
I said we make that a requirement for the board president position.
I like that.
Okay.
Is that, like, obviously I'm not expecting to give GPS an answer this evening, but is that something that you guys feel we might have an interest in at least looking into?
Tentatively looking into, sure.
If we can find a Santa that we don't have to pay $500, I would be
And
willing to
similarly,
look
a
into.
photographer, we don't
Yes.
have to pay $500. If we can find someone from
Could we
LinkedIn,
make it is there any potential we could make it collaborative with like the photography team from Detour and kind of make it promotional in some way, like allow them to
That would be a question for Troy. Because we can't.
we have a newly active photography department from what I remember from what Amanda was saying, but
Yeah, like I said, it's something we'd have to ask Troy to reach out to them and start that conversation. But I would not be opposed to having that discussion. Troy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know that a number of them are, as opposed to hobbyists, a number of them are actually professional photographers. So I think, trying to think of how to word it, I think we would just want to be careful and make sure. I think we would want to be able to present it to them to see if it's something they would be willing to do, but we also might want to have it on the back burner. Payment could be an option that I don't think we would want to come to them and ask them to do it and not have that be a potential option. I guess is how I'm trying to present it. Similar to like,
don't do it for the exposure.
Yeah, I was going to say similar to the artist exposure argument. Is we'd want to be careful that we weren't kind of infringing on that. That it's connected peripherally, but And depending on if they are, staff or not, like we wouldn't want to start building out other events connected through ATC that was asking them for their photography skill set that also might be their paid profession. I'm sure that rates could be negotiated, but just we would want to have that sort of prepared for ourselves that I think that they would certainly be probably cheaper than, if we just Googled a thing. But
right. And in terms of like community engagement, community involvement kind of thing, you're using resources, but you're also like allocating the appropriate funds.
Yeah, we just wouldn't want them to feel obligated to say yes under, the volunteer organization they're working for. That we would just maybe want to have, be able to have that conversation with them about what sort of compensation could look like if they were willing or able to do it, and then giving them the opportunity to decide on the compensation or be willing to do it gratis, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, get a timeline from GPS, I would say. Like, figure out when they're trying to, like, peg down some, like, details of this, and then we can, like, peg down some of our details and reach out to the parties that we think could be optional resources.
Yeah.
And then what that looks like from, like, a social media advertisement perspective, like...
I would even say do this, like, asking if there's a certain time they want to hear back from us by, just so we have...
Yeah.
That
a timeline, yeah.
Yeah, and because I think one of the key components there's on the tail end of it is what sort of advertisement push they're going to give it, because it's great when we do these community sort of involvement things, but if it's not well advertised, it's not as optimal, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Could we incorporate something that does like a fandom gift gear drive or something? Like donate your lightly or unused anime merch to like kids in your community who might, kind of putting that spin on it to like engage in that way from a donation perspective.
I mean, we could probably do that. We'd have to figure it out, but I mean...
Because I feel like tons of businesses do gift drives, so like it's just a matter of like what that looks like for us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can definitely look at some of those options. Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out to them, try to get a timeline, and we can talk about it. Yeah, we can talk about it. We'll go from there. So then let's roll on next to SOS. I have not gotten any correspondence from anybody regarding any SOS stuff. I've looked at doing some other events, tried to reach out to people, but I've not gotten any feedback from anybody in a couple of months at this point. The last event I tried to run was a little board game night here a little bit over a month ago, and nobody came. So that's kind of where we're sitting on that. So I'm gonna have to drum around, see if people want to keep doing it. I really don't want to. Unfortunately, I don't have the time or energy to rebuild it from scratch to where it was.
I'd say maybe try something similar again, but with more a lead up, because it seemed like the announcements on that board game day went out really
it felt kind of last minute, but I think if we were to like make something or create something regular that was engaged with or hosted, that would be good. But I think it's about like our connections that we utilize for it as well. Like just pushing it on social media or like using like other tools to like push that, or maybe advertising our nonprofit like with local game stores or something like that might be a cute way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Assuming that was Troy?
Yeah, and just sort of a bit related to that, you know, something that I know that we have, and I think it's something that I don't think we've maximized the potential of is, you know, we as an anime related organization that has an anime related convention that has a degree of popularity, we have a twice a month anime club, and we don't seem to promote that very well.
That's the Suinchi?
Yeah, I would also suggest that it's.
I thought that was GPSs that we were.
It's actually it's a
okay.
cooperative element, but I would also suggest that it might be a little too cleverly named. I don't think most people, when they see that, they are aware of what it is.
I've never heard of this.
Right.
Why have I never heard of this?
I've been involved in the organization for a number of years, and most people don't know when they hear Shminishi that it is our every other Friday or 2 Fridays a month anime watching club at GPS, partnered between ATC and GPS. So I don't know who decided on the name, but not saying they can't keep the name, but it might need to be. I don't know. I just think when you just see that on a calendar, I don't know, if you don't know what it is, you might not know what it is. Similar to when we used to call things kotatsu. If you didn't know what that was, you weren't going to know what it was.
Yeah, that's. You gotta give them some.
Perhaps adding like a subtitle of like what that event is, like kind of like the expansion of it. And then obviously media pushes. I just didn't know this was a thing.
No,
So
that wasn't. It was not meant as a some sort of volley at you at all, Brittany. It was just that, I mean, we've had this for, I don't know, maybe the better part of a decade, and it's a regular thing unless there's a snowstorm or something like that all year long. So I don't know what type of numbers they get, but I know that there are members of ATC that are regular attendees of Detour that go to this the 2 Fridays a month. It's something that if I didn't, well, now with some mobility issues, but if it was something that if I hadn't been working, regularly Fridays to be able to take in anime in a more social setting like that would be something that I would have looked forward to quite often. So it's something that we're doing together with GPS that we could certainly push as well to at least let folks know is out there, and at least give them another event, or at least make them more aware of an event that we're already doing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's already set up and existing and running, that sort of thing. And maybe more will come that weren't aware of it. Maybe they weren't aware of Detour, that sort of thing. Maybe it increases more additional volunteers or staff, that sort of thing.
More push is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, but I just thought we know what's out there, but if we pushed a little bit on social media, and if we could get that information, I can make sure that it gets to Ari, and then as we've talked about so often, making sure that sort of what exists on the ATC website, also carries over onto the Detour website, and then we're kind of getting it on both ends.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else have any other thoughts or ideas on that? I don't see anything else in chat. Alright, since I'm not seeing anything, we will move on to the finance.
What?
Did you say something?
No.
Oh, I thought you said wait.
No.
Anyways, so I did get an update on the numbers from Kim. As of the September financials, she got a complete list of the income expenses. We got that here. As of yesterday morning, the account balances are at $183,088.36. Community fund is at $13,782.26. The education fund is at $2,508.84. Get to the right tabs here. Trying to find. Okay. That's not the right email either. So that's the last of the financial updates we got for that. So then we roll on to the two non-budget related board talks. First is the board member voting eligibility. Matt, I'll let you take that as you brought up.
Yep, so my thing was, so I didn't get a ballot in the last presidential election. I was told that was because I hadn't met the meeting requirements. Now, yes, you have to do a certain amount of meetings to be considered a voting member under the general membership guidelines. My contention would be that as a board member, by very virtue of that position, as a member elected to cast votes for this body, it stands to reason a board member would have voting eligibility for that by virtue of the office. To suggest otherwise is categorically absurd.
Actually, we have it in our bylaws. Article 2(1)(b). Not voting. Non-voting members are dues-paying members who are either under the age of 18 or have not met the requirements for voting membership.
Yep,
non-voting members are eligible to fill offices of ATC but may not vote outside of their office if chosen.
It's still patently ridiculous to suggest that literally, because the job of the board member is to cast votes for this body.
Yeah, for policies and stuff and other voting at board meetings and stuff. So that and the other section in their waivers, it states the board coordinator, the ATC board, any ATC coordinator or member of ATC may not waive these requirements in reference to the voting requirements.
But my problem is I believe it does then create a conflict with the bylaws in the sense that I can cast a vote to fill a position that we're appointing, right?
For
anything. If we're like appointing a temporary position.
I don't. If it's a voting position, such as voting on a board member, I do not believe so, because that is sent out to the voting membership. In this case, for the positions we have to fill, the board we nominate an individual who's expressed interest, and then that is passed on once the board agrees that we find that person acceptable to present to the voting membership. That vote is then passed on to the voting membership for a yes or no vote.
But by that logic, then we couldn't say have a vote to place an interim president. Casting a vote for interim president is indeed basically filling a position.
You're not wrong.
I know I'm not.
I hadn't thought about that because.
Wait, does this have to do with the coordinator roles at all?
No.
Okay.
No. So during the last during the election this recently, we did not send Matt a voting ballot because he had not met the eligibility requirements listed in our bylaws. He was a meeting or two. Yeah, and in our bylaws we had put it in there with that specifically because at one point we had when Ashley, Troy, and I were redoing the bylaws, we actually ran into the situation where literally only 2 of 7 board members had met eligibility requirements to vote, and we put that in there with the intent to, and this isn't trying to be malicious towards any individual explicitly, but to prevent people having the opportunity of of essentially not wanting to come to any meetings or do any of the other eligibility requirements, but gaining a seat as a board member and automatically having those rights given to them when others who have tried, because at the time we wrote them, our choice was based on the fact that it felt very unfair to those that had put in the time and the effort to come to the meetings and put in that FaceTime.
But is there not an incorporated like requirement for getting voted in as a member to like fulfill those before?
You just have
or
to
no?
like, be a member, period. You do not have to be like a voting member, a general voting member.
So here, I'll read you. So right now, our voting requirements. A voting membership will be restricted to individuals 18 years of age or older who have met the requirements listed in this section and who live within 400 miles of Minneapolis, Hennepin County at the time of the annual meeting. These requirements shall be measured during the previous operating year. Operating year is defined as the time between the previous annual meeting and the upcoming annual meeting. The annual meeting is to be held within 60 days within 60 days following the scheduled end of the event known as Anime Detour as decided by the board. The annual meeting is not to be held concurrently with the Anime Detour post-mortem. Members must number 1, meetings. Members must have attended and personally signed in at 60% of the meetings held in the previous operating year by the same ATC branch or the ATC Board in order to qualify for voting rights. Meeting requirements. A minimum of 4 meetings during the year must be held to count towards this requirement by the same ATC branch. So any coordinator, so in this case, Brittany or Troy, as long as you held 4 meetings in a year, any of those members of your coordinator branch to gain voting rights only has to attend 60% of those 4 or greater meetings. Just to clarify that, meetings must be published on the ATC calendar and open to the public. A copy of the sign-in for the meeting must be sent to the ATC secretary within 1 week of the meeting to keep on record in case of any disputes when calculating voting rights. Waivers. The ATC Board, any ATC coordinator or member of ATC may not waive these requirements. And then we got non-voting, and then, which we already covered, and then dues. Members must have paid their $15 annual dues. These dues are paid through option 1, payment directly to ATC. Option 2, purchase of an Anime Detour badge. A documented badge transfer in the Anime Detour registration system will also trigger the attached ATC membership to be passed on to the recipient. Or 3, persons who receive a complimentary badge to Anime Detour must pay their dues to retain voting rights and membership. And I know part of that was at the same time we had that issue where board members weren't eligible. Also spurred the addition of board meetings, because board meetings, we counted all of the coordinator meetings, but we didn't count board meetings.
I remember that, yeah.
So we added that there, again with the intent that, I mean, if you got Brittany, she held 4 meetings for the social media stuff, you got to show up to 3 meetings.
I was just thinking about that, yeah.
And it's, and that's so I mean, it's
basically it creates a strange gray area.
Yeah.
By really hamstringing an elected position.
Yeah.
I think it's worth revisiting in the future and looking into possibly untangling that mess.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because
like you said,
because technically, as the bylaws are worded right now, we can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you're right. In situations like as what happened, that's another one of those incidents we've not necessarily run into frequently or ever. So let's get something whipped up, so we can get it approved for presentation after the next
Yeah,
board
now that
meeting.
we've identified the issue, we can come up with a resolution to fix it, and vote the next time, moving on.
Okay. Let me just take that note.
Buttons, your hair looks stunning, I just have to say.
Oh, thank you. I still haven't refreshed it. I don't refresh it till right before Colossal Con, actually.
What? It looks so fiery. Oh my god.
That is because I baby it. I spend good money on this hair. It will last.
It better, that is fair enough.
I just suffer with cold showers.
I might have to shower so hot to remind me of where
I only have to, I wash my hair in cold water, and then after that, it's like,
I want first degree burns when we go to the
yeah,
shower.
basically, like, I'm flaying my skin. It's fine.
It grows back.
But I have to wash my hair in cold water, otherwise the color fades faster. And I did not spend $200 for my color to fade after a week.
Okay, so we've got that done, and then the last thing before budgets is the mission statement update. I've been poking at it a little bit, but with everything going on and it being our documents being as big and hefty as they are, I do not have anything that I would call ready to present to the group yet. I'm working on it. I'm hoping to have something ready next month to toss out. I'm probably going to be tossing it out to the board and the coordinators here in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping a week or two before the board meeting so we can talk about it.
Table it till next month then.
Yeah, I was just giving an update.
Cool.
So, and then that, I would say let's take a 15-minute break because sometimes budgets can go long. But somebody stole GPS's key to the bathroom, so
It's on the keyboard. It's clipboard. It's a big clipboard out there.
Is it?
Yes, the key is underneath the piece of paper.
So
We've
I
also
vote,
been unlocked
Okay.
a lot.
I
So-
vote let's take a 15 so
Okay.
we can just...
So we'll take a 15-minute break. We'll get back, and then we will go over. Troy can present his budgets and stuff.
So let's just reconvene at 7:30.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
works.
That gives us about 10 minutes.
Close enough to that.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I think we will be back shortly, everybody.
Sounds good.
And we are back. Back again.
She's back.
There we go. Please now save it. I will remember to do that tomorrow.
Yay.
All right, we're back.
That song stuck in my head the rest of the night. I did this to myself.
Charles, to answer your question, would changing the bylaws only to benefit board members be a conflict of interest? I can see how it would be perceived as that, but not necessarily. In this case, let's say we had a situation where we did not have enough people able to vote on a thing at the board level that required their vote that they were not eligible for, then we could not legally make that vote.
Until we waited till voting window opens up to handle it. So.
And the problem with that is, in some situations, we may not, it requires board approval, and in some of those situations, if we don't make that change, we may not be able to get board approval because it prohibits us. So that's a little catch-22 loophole.
But if you're worried about it, we've got 3 open positions. You're welcome to apply for one.
Yep. And this is not something. Actually, yes. This couple years ago, we ended up when our it was actually ended up resulting in my first election as president. We had several people that wanted to abstain from selections or anything, and the way the bylaws were worded, we would not have been able to present anything if that had happened. And this is not something that, so these bylaw changes, how it works is, in this case, Matt will draft something, he's going to present it to us, we are going to, as the board will give our feedback, you guys, if you're here, are more than welcome to provide your feedback on it. And then once we have all come to the point where the majority, because it's not a unanimous thing, it is a majority, where the majority agrees that this is something acceptable, we then take that and we send that out within 30 days as similar to the elections, and the voting members of the organization membership that have reached those voting rights that we were talking about are then given the option to vote yes or no on that modification of the bylaws. If they vote no, it doesn't happen. Or if the majority vote is no, it doesn't happen and things stay they are. If yes, then the bylaws change and we continue from there.
Speaking of, you might want to remind this individual that none of the meetings they've actually been at account for their voting records because they aren't sending emails. So without the emails to actually register, none of these count for their voting rights.
Well, actually, yes, Charles. Absolutely, anyone can. So anyone, audience member, board member, anyone can propose a change to the bylaws. It's just the board has to approve that change to be sent to the voting membership. So in this case,
so it's a lot like Congress and constitutional amendment.
So in this case, Matt can make the proposal to change it. As the bylaws sit, he would not be eligible to vote yes or no on this change. The rest of the voting membership would be eligible for that.
No, I'd be eligible to vote on the change. I'd be eligible to vote on the change at the board level.
You'd be able to vote on the approval to send it out to the voting membership.
Yeah.
But I mean after that, the actual vote from the membership.
Unless by the time the vote would come around, I've achieved the amount of vote meetings or whatever.
It is based off of last year's meeting cycle. So from the annual meeting to the from the start of the annual meeting to the start of the next annual meeting.
Yep.
So since you did not reach it last year, you technically would not have voting rights until.
Which I'm thinking we should also update to allow for rolling stuff as the year goes on. Like if you achieve the 60% in the current cycle, I think that would also be a worthwhile change.
I would have to change it. That's
another proposal we can think about, but Like, if you're literally.
That's something I would say if you once you reach 60% in this current cycle.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, just not like 60% halfway through from halfway last year to halfway this year.
I'm saying for the current cycle, yes.
I mean, that's...
So you get in your voting rights, quote unquote, for the current cycle, literally if you achieve 60% of the meeting of that cycle, like, congratulations, you made it.
I mean,
You did it.
I wouldn't necessarily say that's an unreasonable suggestion.
It's something I can draft.
We can look at it. We can draft it. We can present it and talk about it. See what people think.
Let's get started on the budget. That's why we're all here.
Yep. So.
Money.
All right, Troy, good sir, are you ready to give us some magic numbers?
Yeah. I mean, I guess not sure how you want it delivered exactly.
Give us a number, break it down a little bit. I mean, we don't necessarily need line items, but
Let me just pull this.
I mean, the only thing that I would, because I know you've always said that you don't want to have oh god, how did you put it? You don't want to have a budget just for the sake of budget to be able to buy absolutely everything you've ever wanted. Like here's your list, but like if there's a significant increase, like I don't know, just like is it purchasing new things? Is it updating or like
let me
just kind of a general idea of what it's for?
Okay, so the total that we'll be asking for is 329,329,48. So let's see, and then I can go through and give you probably a couple of let's see, highlights. So obviously some of our larger budgeted areas, which doesn't mean they necessarily have shown a large increase this year, but just represent a higher percentage of the overall budget, would be tech. So obviously that would be representing everything main stage, etc. Some areas showing a larger increase would be, let's say, guests. We have marketing. Just trying to find some areas of, in particular, some areas that have shown a little bit of an increase from historically. Historically, we've had some departments that have had a very minuscule budget, like sub 500, or sub 2,000, like cosplay, exhibit hall, artist alley. So those have been underfunded. Or funded at a very low level for a number of years. So in order to kind of become a little more current and update those departments, they've needed to increase. So exhibit hall overall is staying roughly the same. There isn't a lot of operational costs or capital purchases involved with that one. Let me just double check here. Artist alley is very similar to that. Cosplay, though, however, with the new department heads and some of the initiatives that they're looking to do to update that area and continue to represent what we've always held as a very high standard for that department and that event, there needed to be some additional funds there. So that has shown a significant increase from what their budget was historically. Facilities, there is a considerable increase in that department. Some of that is contractual, and it's just us being at our most responsible. Sorry, I just lost the wording I was looking for. Our meeting room costs at the end are dependent on our room filling capabilities. So obviously we won't know those until we do know those. So we have to budget for those at that highest tier, as if we sold this amount of rooms, which would equate to this highest cost. Sorry?
I'm sorry, just to say that, because I've been typing the notes while you go here. I heard meeting and then room cost. Are you talking like our meetings there, or are you talking
event space? It's worded in the contract as like meeting space. So all of the panel rooms. Okay. Essentially, most of it is booked out as main stage. Okay. So the price on that is dependent on guest room sold. So if it's within this number of rooms, we get it at this price. And there's 3 tiers of that. So in previous budgets, they were budgeting that at the highest number of rooms sold, and budgeting for getting that meeting space at the lowest cost to us.
So essentially you're kind of planning for the worst and hoping for the best?
Right. Now, granted, we will most likely always reach that, as long as we've been there, we've sold those rooms. But to not budget for that, I feel wouldn't be at our most fiscally responsible. So,
we're getting very similar to guests. So.
Yeah, and so when we saw that it has been budgeted at the more appropriate level this year, and it was just towing that kind of contractual line. So it represents a large increase, but it's just to meet that worst case contractual obligation. Some of the increase in guests is a continuation of sort of the updating of that department over the years in terms of, again, some of the contractual obligations, not picking folks up in our personal cars without headlights, and one of the larger increases this year that is a little, it's increased even at this date, is flight costs. Those are very high across the board. So that represents a significant portion of the increase in that department. And then 2, with that change in the guests and the overall model, most of them will be on the guarantee model. So with that, we have to sort of budget as if they would potentially not meet their guarantee. So there's another instance of most likely we will come in significantly lower on that, but we do have to be responsible and budget as if we wouldn't and would need to pay those out.
And just to clarify the guarantee, to clarify for the guarantee, because I know I've had that discussion.
So on the guaranteed model, if your guest of honor comes in, they have a set dollar amount for their guarantee. If they reach that guarantee, you do not have to pay them and what would normally equate to an appearance fee. And that dollar amount can change. It's different depending on the guest and the contract that you've signed. If they do not meet that guarantee in terms of what they have sold at their booth, then you would have to pay them that an appearance fee. So we believe that with our size and scope and our marketing and the popularity of our guests and the engagement that we've seen from our attendees, that we won't have any issue reaching those. But like I said, it's just most responsible for us to budget as if we would need to pay those out. But we're confident that in most, if not all of those situations, we would not need to do that. But that's sort of we do have a few that would most likely, 1 or 2 that might just be on, that they have elected to just be on an appearance fee. So we would just pay them the appearance fee, and then that's the end of our sort of financial obligation to them in terms of whether it's a guarantee or an appearance fee. but most of them will be on on guarantees, and that's just kind of how that portion of the industry works. But like I said, we feel it's best to budget as if we would need to pay those. Let's see. Some increased costs in programming. Again, that had kind of been a lesser funded department. Some things had not been on their budget. So when working with our new department head, he's like, well, I didn't see these on last year's budget, but these were actually some costs that we've had. So we wanted to make sure that not only that department, but with every department, like if it's something that is a cost to your department, we want it on your budget. Like we don't want staff subsidizing the convention. You know, if you're paying for supplies and things like that, put that on the budget. That is something that the convention should be paying for. Printing costs, things like that. There's a few, some of the acts that programming brings in, we do pay, not merely panelists, but something like the taiko drummers, or we had a band last year. There's a few events like that. So there's a little bit of an increased cost there. Registration, there's a little bit of a significant increase there. And keep in mind that some of these increases are going to be depending on how far back you look. Like if we try to compare these costs to in preparation for 2022, a lot of them are going to look even more inflated. Some of the budgets for 2022, some of the budgets were able to be decreased because they had already had a lot of the supplies and things purchased in preparation for 2020 that we ended up canceling just 3 weeks before the event. So they didn't need to repurchase some of these items for 2022. Whereas once they were utilized for 2022, a lot of them were essentially back down to zero in terms of these items, and now we're starting fresh for the first time since when budgets were submitted this time in 2019. So registration and looking to utilize the new printers that we have that we weren't able to utilize for 2022. They are going to have some different supply costs. So there's going to be some increased costs there, particularly in the ribbons. The cards, I believe, will remain mostly the same. But yeah, the ribbons are going to be a little more expensive than the previous version of the printers. Tech hasn't really had much fluctuation, though we're giving some additional consideration there depending on what our costs will be for potentially looking at the contractor that our hotel partner would use to help with doing, well, essentially they would be doing the setup for the exhibit hall. So looking at the option of doing away with our volunteer staff setting up the entirety of that room as far as the booth and the on the hands and knees taping and things like that. So whether we wouldn't have the manpower, or with the largeness of that space and the amount of time that could take, the time that takes impacts. We can't have the vendors set up their booth unless things are taped down. So they're kind of right behind us waiting to catch up with us. The longer that setup takes, it can encroach on the time that we're able to open on Friday, which can decrease the number of hours we have available for vendors to be open, which can cause some satisfaction issues with them. So looking at the number of staff and the number of man hours there and trying to compare that to a cost estimate from that exhibitor on having them come in and set up those booths and seeing if that's going to be manageable for us in terms of the totality of what that would add to the costs. So we want to make sure that if that's something we're able to look at and go through, that we have those funds on hand. Also, with Acme, the band coming in, that's a very different undertaking than some of the other bands that we have had in, and they have some different specific instrument needs, maybe some different light changes from what we've had. I don't know that for sure. That's, you know, Tristan's neck of the woods. But in the event that they do need different lights or sound capabilities than we have previously used at that price point, it could increase that price point. So again, we wanted to make sure that we have the budget available, as this isn't something that we have done previously at this scale. Themes may have shown a little bit of an increase. Again, that's going to be because a lot of our previous signage was basically set to the floor plan of Doubletree. So asking departments for their needs, and whether they be new needs, new departments, the retractable signs have either become misplaced or broken, or just additional help in getting our attendees to find these areas. So they may have seen some a small or moderate increase in their cost for those signage. Video has a small increase for some assistance with some sound bars for their spaces. Those had been on budgets back to 2019 and had just kind of been something that had been cut a number of times. Video game hasn't really changed. Volcon hasn't changed. That was actually that really hadn't changed. Volunteers hasn't really changed much. I think there's a few departments that I might have popped over here. I think room parties we left a little bit out there in case you know, we're gonna talk with them and look at some potential for how to keep incentivizing people to throw those room parties. So we're looking at something as far as bed removal and working with the hosts and the hotel. So we wanted to have some funds on hand to see how that might play out for us. And let's see, there was one other department. Oh, IT, we showed an increase as we have an option that we're looking at that we believe would be beneficial in terms of basically it's an event management system that we had had conversations with our IT head and some of the vice chairs, and it seems like it's something that would work really well with us and be pretty easily integrated into what we're doing. When and where that takes place, as far as if it was available to us this year, where at in the cycle is still to be determined. It could take place when registration closes, so pre-con, and potentially be available for walk-ups, or in one way of looking at it, perhaps the less worst case scenario, it could be immediately after con. But either way, we have a plan in place on registration for this year, but this would put those finances in place to put that system in place at some point in the calendar year of 2023. Just where at, it's not known, but that would be, but essentially it's not too far removed from, essentially it's nearly the equivalent. It's about $700 off of the cost of what we pay for SCED, and it has about 90% of the same capability of SCED. So essentially, but both are budgeted for in there. So essentially, if we don't use SCED, we would be going with this other entity. So essentially, it'd be about $2,500 less total for that department. So I think that's about it for most of the departments. We added a few things to Ambassador. We did keep the same, relatively speaking, the same number of shows that we had done in the before times. Just some of them are roughly the exact same time of year. Essentially, GalaxyCon hasn't returned. In working with Buttons and Tristan, Twin Cities Con is a second year con that is roughly the same time of year. Be trying that one, and then Buttons has been working with Colossal Con North, which is roughly the same time of year in the fall that DaiShoCon used to at the Kalahari. So we'll be working with them. Otherwise, our theme partner con that we've been working with for a number of years. And I think we added, those were really the only other ones that so they just basically took the place of existing ones. But some of them were off of the docket. Well, most of them were off of the docket for the last couple of years during pandemic. So some of those costs returned. That I think is essentially it for all the departments. Merch, we showed some increase again. Last year we reused most of the merchandise, and the theme part of that was, it worked out for that reason. So this year they're kind of back to as they would normally do in purchasing new merch for a new theme. So yeah, there's some returning costs there, and another innovation that we're pretty excited about, but it does require some upfront costs. So, but we think it will, no pun intended, pay off handsomely. So that's, I realize that's, I'd say the long and short of it, but I think it was just the long of it. So I can entertain any questions.
It's not necessarily out of line with what I was expecting with having these several years of sitting on the same merch, not updating processes, stuff not, in the case of being example the one for tech, the upcoming expenses we're gonna have with various other things changing and us having to catch up and keep up. It's not, it's
very forward looking.
Yeah.
Prepped to help us grow and keep things going.
Yeah, so example are the approved budget we had in 2019, or that we approved in October 2019 for the 2020 event was $327,000. So this is.
Yeah, and that was kind of our thought. That was 327. Like you said, this is a worst case scenario. The most we hopefully would have to pay, and then most likely we're gonna with how often we have reliably hit things. Like the guest fees, the booking of the hotels for reduced rates, stuff like that. Yeah, for instance, the dollar amount that increased in the contractual amount for the facilities is a difference of $10,000. So if we were looking at even just trying to do that, similar to 327, an additional 10 on top of that is just to make sure that we had that money on hand for worst case scenario for, if we, something just like I said, really worst case scenario, and it just making sure we were budgeting for those worst case scenarios versus thinking, well, we've always hit these, because if we didn't have that money on hand, it would really not only put the future of obviously Detour in peril, but of ATC to kind of find their footing again for another year, for a Detour event or any other kind of events, and could trigger the dissolution of the charter. So we just really wanted to make sure that we were being mindful of that. And like Matt said, for growth. And then we did make cuts. We didn't just, take in the budgets and say, good. But
I was gonna say there's a lot of arguments. Like, I know I don't have a lot to say on this, but there's a lot of like arguments, and it was like 6-hour commitment of like defending and like back and forth.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we're doing our best by all the departments and trying to make sure that we were weighing as much as we could and staying responsible to realizing that we are a piece of the ATC business puzzle, and that there's still other financial obligations on the ATC ledger that need to be considered. So.
We also do have to take into effect the board's budget.
Yeah, when we did the budget process, we very closely big number here, but then also has to factor in ATC budget. So the detour budget was crafted with significant room for ATC.
Okay, I just didn't know because what the numbers Kim was saying in her email, if the number of detour's budget minus what was going to be the 150, like that's.
I brought it up personally.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent the chairman group essentially that same email that Kim had sent out, just so again that we are sharing all that information with the chairman team so that we're all working on that same mindset, and Matt made sure to remind us of that as we were 5 hours deep, and so that we didn't forget that.
Just because I like round numbers, I would like to propose to round it to 350.
Just round up just because.
It's 600. It's $349,329.48.
Approximately $671.52.
Yes.
Sure, move to approve $350,000 budget for detour operating expense.
Second.
All in favor?
For captions, that's unanimous approval.
Yes, Charles.
That-
breakdown, it does. There's a number of things that.
That's the entirety of the whole convention, Charles.
Yeah, the whole convention.
That's what it costs us to procure the hotel for the entirety of the weekend, and including all day Thursday that we have for setup. It's everything.
It's vendors, it's DJs, it's events, it's like cosplay judges, it's like so many things. Like it's crazy how many things this funds.
And
it's staff planning. It's crazy.
Yeah, and keep in mind again that we're planning this all year. It's an entirely a volunteer staff. It's all of the registration stuff. It's entirely a volunteer staff working all year round. It is, and we are a nonprofit. So there's our goal is to break even. The money that is made past that is returned back to the organization to create next year's event. And as you heard earlier discussions, outside of that, it's looked at how to be dispersed either back into the organization and or back into charitable giving. So that's what it costs to put on an event for 7,000 people and rent out space at the.
That's really not bad for like an event of 7,000 people.
Yeah.
Like when I was like looking at these budgets compared to like what I know some concerts run on, I'm like, this is all we spend? Oh my God.
The rooms we hold our meetings in here at GPS, the Geek Partnership Society here in the Waterbury, we get a discount because we partner with them and there's contracts and payments and stuff. But they do offer these rooms up for rent at a significantly smaller fee than you would find in a lot of other like office spaces or rental stuff like that. And they're all open to the community to rent. Sam, I will up that in a second here. I turned things down to reduce the echo with Troy and them. Anyways, sorry, like I was saying. So, for example, the large meeting room we have here, which I think somebody told me it was like 1,200 feet. The large room.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
It's about 1,200.
Yeah, something.
It's about 1,200 square feet. I'd say it's 30 by 50 ish.
Something like that.
So a room that they rent out that room. So for our staff meetings, which are usually about 4 hours, that's around the $150 category.
It is coming
just
up
to
next
rent out
weekend.
that room for a couple hours. Things like hotels and stuff. Those are much bigger
Like,
rooms.
It's ultimately though it's not detour costs $350,000. It's operating expenses for the entire year for the entire organization. This is
Correct.
all the road shows, the marketing, the fee rentals for our staff meetings. This is all said and done. It's not just those 3 days.
I mean, you're obvious. So as Detour is an event put on by Anime Twin Cities, and those costs are public, and obviously you're hearing them here in the public board meeting. As far as broken down, no, and I can tell you why. I mean, obviously it's part of our. A lot of them are part of contracts. So a lot of that falls under NDAs or non-disclosure agreements. So whether that's part of our individual contract with guests of honor or vendors or the hotel itself, or like folks that we use for our audio visual needs, anybody that we have a contract with, things like that isn't something that we would divulge specifically out to the public. So that would so again, you see the total allotment that the public facing 501c3 entity has allotted to this event, but you wouldn't see the individual costs of what this department spends or something like that, unless you were involved in that particular part of the planning. So it's not meant to be secretive, but like I said, a lot of it falls under signing those contracts and NDAs and that agreement with the vendor or entity, and they don't want that information divulged for legal reasons. So I hope that answers the question.
What was that?
Short answer: no. Our costs are not the broken down costs are not public.
Yeah, they're not for those reasons.
Anyway, I'm going to say the question they're asking answered is 8 o'clock. So I'd like to get on with the meeting.
Yeah.
I'd like to get home at a decent time.
Like to adjourn.
But we still got to talk our budget.
Do we even have one drafted?
I don't have a breakdown, but I have a number and again, some things are going to fluctuate, but I had a number based off of what we had spent in the past, the last number of years, how it was trending. So the last 3 years, 2017, we did 43,000 for a ATC budget, not counting charitable giving. The year that next year, 2018, we actually took the locker fees off of the detour budget, which was 13,884. I don't remember. I don't think that's.
What's the big number?
2019 was 59,745. And that was operating expenses. So that's our insurance, our various licensing fees, our contracts with GPS. I know a couple of those have gone up a little bit. Mm-hmm. I don't believe it's gone up an overly significant amount. I was looking to approve 65,000, just because
no, that's
3 years
on previous
with markup.
numbers, though. I don't think that'll be necessary because of the contract for GPS changing. Just to put it that way.
I understand that.
Cost savings there.
But we also have to even though that there may be a cost difference in that, any other expenses related to that. I don't want to go into it too much yet because we're still waiting for the final agreement between us and GPS.
I would call for a special meeting to discuss the budget to present for approval the next meeting. At this point, now that the detour budget, we should sit down together, craft a budget with that number in mind, which I don't think now is the appropriate time to do so.
I'm just trying to think of any, because technically we can't spend any money unless we approve something provisionary until then. So that's what I was looking at. I wasn't necessarily, I mean, we can talk about it and approve a final number, but I want to approve like a provisionary, like minimum, this is what we're looking at that we have to spend, because we do have things that are due right away in October, technically, if we don't
So I would
approve.
approve a temporary allocation of $5,000 for operating expenses until we get a final budget approved.
I was going to go with 20.
For a month? Because I'm saying we have a final budget approved next month, and we should, but since it's provisionary, it doesn't really matter what the number is.
Yeah, well, that's just because I haven't had a chance to Kim. I don't know all those numbers, so I just wanted to go with 20, because no matter what we do, our budget's going to be larger than that 20.
Sure,
no matter what we do.
approve an operating temporary expenditure budget of $20,000 pending a full adoption of a final budget.
Second.
All in favor?
It's unanimous.
Unanimous approval. All right, let me get these.
So I think our budget we should have more time to discuss and devote to crafting that carefully.
Yes.
So I don't want to tie down anything today without having a chance to fully work through it. Give it the due care it deserves. So
No, absolutely agree and understand.
no, looks like the stream froze.
I'm still alive. I'm still hardwired.
Yeah, whatever.
Internet said no.
Yep. Not a big
I was
deal.
gonna say, I think it was like dipping for a little bit. It was like in and out.
Yeah.
Now it seems to be completely frozen.
Sure, why? Because we're hardwired. We're not.
Oh, I know.
No.
I either want food in my mouth or beer in my mouth. Maybe both.
I'm ready for the wind down before bed. Same.
Okay, got that written down. I'm sorry, I was reading the comments.
I don't think we need to respond
that is all that was at that special meeting. Also, we should discuss the final details of the contract with GPS.
Yep, so
Gotta say that, because if we don't, we can't have it.
So I
We
would
can't have that
call
discussion.
for a special executive session to discuss all that. And contract negotiations and internal budget stuff, I believe it's appropriate to have closed.
Yes.
Alright, that is called. We will get that scheduled. Okay, that was the last thing on the agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Well, I was just gonna get there. You're too
Point of order is on the table. As a chair, it's your job to resolve the motion.
All right. Nobody else has had any
Point of order, motion's on the table.
Is
Your
the
job as chair to do it.
different
adjudicate it.
Cooking book. All right, so we will call to adjourn the meeting at.
Already been moved.
I know.
Seconded.
At 8:15. I was looking at the time because we never have times on others, so I was trying to.
You adjourn the meeting after the motion to adjourn has been adjudicated. That's when you call the time. Call for again.
All four? 8:15. Okay.